The old creative paradigm was built on force and discipline. But the new paradigm that I see emerging is one that is built on regulation. Because a well-regulated nervous system is the perfect ingredient to cultivate deep safety, to fail, to fuck up, to express yourself in new, bigger ways that force does not encourage. So in this video, I want to break down the secret to consistency, why you need to throw that old paradigm out the window and really tune into something deeper and more resonant inside of you. Because this is the ingredients that are going to make your creativity so much more juicy and impactful. And if you're new here, my name's Kev. I'm an award-winning furniture designer. I also design architecture, and I love helping creatives get out of their heads and into their bodies. So this old paradigm that still seems very relevant, right, is this hustle, go, 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 move, 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 force, force, force. And while there is always a kernel of truth in just about everything, right? What I find for creatives is we either completely reject this because we're like, no man, I'm all flow, I don't want any structure. Or we get so rigid and we get so forceful with needing to just go output, 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 output that we burn out. We rest and then we burn out again and burn out again and burn out again, right? I know what it's like. But the true secret to consistency is in cultivating safety, right? If you want to have the courage to express yourself boldly, you need to find a deep sense of safety that is not offered in a strategy, that is not offered in necessarily a pep talk, even though this is a talk, and that is not offered in what any of the gurus are talking about, right? What you need to truly cultivate is such a strong connection to yourself and what's happening in your body that you inherently have an embodied sense of safety because you know that you can stay connected to yourself when things get difficult, when challenge arises, when resistance arises, when the need to people please, when you want to just become a perfectionist, when you want to procrastinate, when you want to analyze every possible outcome. When you can take a moment to pause and connect to something deeper, to really actually inquire what's happening in my nervous system right now and how can I balance, regulate, downshift into that safety instead of going up into those stories that cause more and more dysregulation, that is when you become that much more embodied, magnetic, and consistent because you tap into something that is sustainable, right? It's your own wellspring of validation, of safety, of inspiration. These are the things that we often look for out there in the world, and that's the trap. The trap of seeking that external safety, that external validation, the external inspiration is that we get attached to whatever forms we tend to find them. It's not wrong, it's so natural, it just gets really slippery. And I find that you can never get enough of something that almost works. And that external safety, oh, I feel really safe when I'm in that group. And again, all this is amazing. All this is good stuff, right? I want you to be resourced. I want you to have support systems. But when I seek all of my external validation from these people telling me that my work is impacting people, that gets really slippery because I'm going to unconsciously attach to it and I'm always going to want more because it's not the most genuine, sincere, authentic, 100% certified, organic sense of embodied safety that comes from my own wellspring of a well-regulated nervous system, right? And I just have too much evidence in my own life and in the people that I love and the clients that I serve to deny that a well-regulated nervous system which means your capacity to stay connected to yourself as life stretches you out in many directions at once, right? That is where you find devotion, not discipline. Discipline is force. Devotion is a grounded connection to yourself that naturally keeps going because it wouldn't have it any other way. Discipline, it can sometimes feel artificial. Like it's more shame-based, right? Devotion is this more opening versus discipline is more narrowed and closing in my eyes. And when you can stay connected to yourself and stay tending to your nervous system and your window of tolerance, you can create consistently, meaningfully, and deeply over longer periods of time versus the inevitable burnout cycle that comes from force. And what I see is that's the pathway. There's this kind of creative fork in the road that says, force it or go deeper, force or depth. It's the same, what I find to be true, is the same argument of try something different or just keep going deeper. And I find that going deeper often reveals more of your truth. The real deep, juicy expression that wants to come into matter through you. That is already energy inside of you. That doesn't need to be found out there. It just needs to be given the spaciousness and the safety and the devotion to emerge. And it takes going deeper, going deeper, going deeper, going deeper. Strategies and tactics and guru stuff, that's all the low-hanging fruit on the surface, right? But where you find that deep momentum, inspiration, and drive, the passion that doesn't need to be pressured, that is found deep in your core. And I find for me as a man, it literally is like deep in my core of my being, like the center of my being, which is in my body. You know, and when I go deeper, when I breathe deeper into that, when I slow the fuck down and I feel what's actually going on, I can connect to that. Not always. It's unrealistic to always be there, right? It's always available, but that doesn't mean I'm always there because I get shit stuck on the line. I get stories that disconnect me from going into my body, that keep me up in my head, right? But my consistency, my capacity to be able to devote, to create these videos, to show up and get in the shop every single day regardless, comes from me being able to have the practices that get me into my body and let it feel good, even if there's resistance and things like that. Even if there's, man, I really want to strive for this unrealistic excellence and be perfect, but I get it. This feels right to express. It doesn't need to be perfect. And in fact, the imperfection is what makes it human. That's my example, right? But that level of devotion and connection to myself is what creates the consistency. And that's really what this whole new paradigm is founded on. That I see so many creatives, creators, artists really booming and blooming into is because they have this deep safety that they root into that comes from their own wellspring. It doesn't need the validation. It doesn't need the numbers and the metrics to reflect their self-value. It just becomes, I know my inherent self-value. I am safe to confidently express myself, to fail, to create misunderstandings, to create all of these things that could potentially spiral me into the stories that make me want to hide, collapse, feel small. But instead, I open because I'm inherently safe. That is fucking powerful. That is the place where your creativity is going to come fully online. And that starts when you stop focusing less on the mental stories, the cognitive strategies, what this person says to do, and you do the more awkward but deeper work of connecting to yourself. Can you feel your own heart right now? Can you feel your breath go deeper than the back of your throat? Can you feel the breath filling your lungs, your belly, your heart space? Are you aware of your toes on the ground? I know this sounds super fundamental because it is. It's baseline aliveness, right? And if you're not there, like, how do you expect to access higher functions? If you're not really connecting to the emotion, the texture of your day, how are you supposed to create authentically if you're already denying what you're feeling? You know? And I'm just a stand for, like, we need to check the box off of these very fundamental baseline things, you know? I joke with all my friends often. It's like, I feel like 90% of the problems in my life, and maybe even the world, could be solved if I drink more water, get better sleep, and eat real food, you know? Throw in some good exercise, and oh my goodness, you know? Like, but I digress. That deep consistency that will help propel you into the success of that this new paradigm can offer you is tending to your nervous system in a way that you can stay connected to yourself and be wider and wider and wider, meaning circumstance can happen and you have a practice in a way of breathing and staying connected to yourself instead of doom looping stories, shame spiraling, leaving your body, reverting to old patterns and all of that. And instead, you find a way that maybe every other time that happens, you choose to ground and root. That is so successful, right? It doesn't mean you're like this all the time. I want to be clear about that. Having a well-regulated nervous system doesn't actually mean that you are calm and regulated and namaste all the time. It just means that even when you're activated, you can stay connected to yourself. And you can feel your feet on the ground. You know? I like to use the analogy of baseball, like a really successful batter in baseball only gets on base 1 out of 3 times. You know, 7 out of 10 times they don't make it on base. You know, 300% is freaking great. That's like way below failing in school, you know. So let that be a testament to being graceful with the journey, right? You don't just snap your fingers and now I'm all of a sudden so connected and so rooted in my values, let's freaking go. You can see a lot of transformation immediately, but it's a long road. But this is the only road that it really becomes sustainable for you to keep giving your gifts to the world. So if you found this helpful and you want to go even deeper, I invite you to check out the Embodied Creator Toolkit. Links in the description below. You can also sign up for my free newsletter. It's a great resource. And just subscribe to get more of this every single week. But in the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!